This. What's up? Welcome back to Jiu-Jitsu Outlet. I'm here with my friend Naqi Sayed, set to open your first academy here. We were just getting into it, and you were just talking about how one of your biggest inspirations is working with kids and training kids. And I just want to start off talking about that, just right where you were just at, man. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, about meeting Mike Stewart?
Sure.
Kind of what got you to want to open your first academy, man?
Hey, Paul, thanks so much for having me on. It is awesome to catch up with you, knowing you for quite some time and your family. Opening a first academy. This is something that actually Mike had told me that I should have done when I was a blue belt. I don't know how many years ago, 8 years ago. He's like, Naqi, you should open up your own school. And I was like, at that time it wasn't the thing. But let me just talk about how I even came across Mike. So we had just moved to Clarksville, where we were just renting a condominium over there, and I drove by this shopping center and I saw a sign, and it said "Kids BJJ" and Muay Thai and martial arts and self defense. And at that time, my daughter was 4 years old, and on that sign it said 4 years and up. I was like, man, this is it. I have to go and take my daughter there, because I always knew that at some point that I wanted to get my kids involved in martial arts. And I knew that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was the best martial arts for kids, especially girls, because it relies so much more on technique and leverage and timing, and not just like, oh, I'm going to punch you or kick you, because we know that's not always the most effective thing against someone who's really motivated to do harm against you, right? So I saw that sign. I made an appointment with Mike. I pulled my daughter in there against her will. She was the shyest person you could ever imagine. She was all clammed up. She was super enthusiastic about going. But I got her in there, and Mike, as soon as I met him, I was like, man, this guy's energetic. He's passionate, and he really loves to teach kids, right? And he also reminded me of my own childhood friend that I went to high school with, and who also trained martial arts. And so there was just a lot of good vibes there. And so we set up this private lesson for him to introduce, the program to Anissa, my daughter, who was 4 at that time, who's 16 now. And he was just awesome. Everything about him, in terms of communicating and connecting with the kids, and then getting her to just open up from being so clamped up from the day one, and even until the end of the very first lesson, just to see a positive change within 1 hour. I just thought it was incredible. And then I ultimately signed my daughter up, and then over several months I would just take Anissa almost every day to school, and she would pick up the techniques, and then I would go home and I would reinforce, and I would get more reps in. I would let her beat me up, get more sparring in, to do all the drills that Mike would do with her. And I just saw her developing more confidence and more at ease with herself, with being able to communicate what she wanted and not having to be shy and be clammed up. So I just saw a lot of positive change and impact in her. And so that was a big indicator that we were on the right path. And then one day, Mike had came across, and he was there teaching like he was every day, and he saw Anissa rolling really well, throwing up triangles, which is Mike's favorite move. And he's like, hey, how is she getting so good? And I said, hey, I just go home and I reinforce everything that you're doing, and I just get her extra reps in and all that. He's like, hey, Naqi, so why don't you do this? Why don't you come and help me teach? This is 2010, 2011-ish. So Mike's school was still very, very small, right? So he didn't have that many students at that time. It was just him, Jordan, and this other guy, TJ, that used to teach. And I think TJ was just an assistant as well, or just a student, used to come on the mats and help. But I said, hey, if you need help, cool, I can be on the mats with my daughter, and then I get to train too. So it was a win-win. But that's how I got into jiu-jitsu. It was basically from being inspired to help my daughter, and then wanting to see that same change and that that transformation that I had in my daughter, and how have that same impact on all the other kids that we had the opportunity to train with. So that's really what was the motivation that got me on the mats and got me to stay on the mats, on top of just having fun with jiu-jitsu and learning and training with my buds. So
Man,
that's how I got to my
I love that story, man. And it just keeps going back to how you really just wanted to do what's best for your daughter. And I know, man, that the more that you lean into this story, the one that you just told me, like this is such a great story for your academy, and such a great mission, you know what I mean, that you can give to other parents
right.
that same experience that you had. Because I always commend and I always really admire parents who sign their kids up for martial arts class, and then they end up taking the classes themselves, and they end up becoming committed to it, and it changes their life. Like my buddy Justin, who I had on the podcast, like he signed up because he, got his kids into it first, and now he's almost a blue belt. And yeah, it's helped him a lot. So just wanted to ask, like, what have you seen jiu-jitsu do for you and your mental health and your life off the mats ever since you started training? Like, what has it done for you personally?
I think that's a really great question. I think jiu-jitsu really helps people in like almost every aspect of their life, which is predicated like if their core is good. Okay, so if your core is bad, I think that jiu-jitsu is probably not a good thing for you. And I like how Roy Dean actually has this phrase. It's called "discover who you are," right? And you get to really peel back a lot of the things that you put up to say, hey, I'm cool with this person, so I'll act like this, or I'm cool with that person, you act like that. It's all because you lack confidence, or um, you have low self-esteem, or you're insecure, right? And I think as you train jiu-jitsu, you do a lot of things. You develop a lot of trusting relationships, and you learn a lot. You develop skills, and I think the biggest thing that happens is that you develop confidence, and that confidence allows you to be yourself. And with that comes a lot of benefits that um, that allow you to just say, hey, this is who I am, and you don't have to play these games and try to juggle like who you are with this person or that person. It's just allows you to find your core, and then you can just present that universally to everyone else. And I think having that confidence just gives you a sense of mental stability, mental health. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits of jiu-jitsu. People are just able to become comfortable with who they are. They're able to get comfortable in uncomfortable situations. I'm sure everyone's heard of that. With me personally, I think that's the biggest thing. On top of that, physical health, lost weight. I get to make meaningful relationships on the mats. You're a service to other people. You get to help others address a lot of these barriers and health issues that they may have, physical and mental health, through the vehicle of jiu-jitsu, which is, if you're helping others, you're helping yourself. It's always good to do that. And I think that's always a cycle that people should help, aim to perpetuate. It's like, how can I help others? Because if you can help others, at the end of the day, it's going to somehow benefit you, and it's going to benefit society. But in more of a localized sense, how does it help me? Definitely more calmer, more considerate, empathetic with my family. My wife used to say, it's funny, she's like, if I used to stop training or take a break from jiu-jitsu for like a couple of days here and there, she's like, Naqi, I think you need to go train jiu-jitsu. You go there, it kind of just helps you decompress. It helps you just reconsider everything from like a fresh lens, right? Because you go in, you may go into jiu-jitsu and you may have had like the worst day. May have gotten an argument with someone, with your friends, or you may have had something happen at work, but you can go in and go train. And then you're in that focus, you're in that moment to survive, and you're in training, and it allows you to completely disconnect from any of that noise that happened earlier in that day or earlier in that week. And then when the training session is done, you survive, you shake hands with your training partner, and guess what? You have gotten exercise, you've released all these good hormones like dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, whatever, and you're in a better place, right? And so I think when you go and do the training, you come back and then you reevaluate all the things that were happening or did happen to you, and you're like, it's not that bad. Let me just reevaluate. It helps you disconnect, re-engage, and helps you become a better problem solver and gets you to really think about like how these problems that you thought were insurmountable really aren't as big as they were. And I think that all feeds into better mental health.
And I think that doing tough stuff, it makes everything else easier. Like it turns the volume down. I mean, they say that in Fight Club, that there's that one line where he's like, man, fighting just turns the volume down on everything else. And it's so true, and man, that's powerful. So like, is this a big reason for you wanting to open this academy, is to kind of like give people this kind of same safe space that you had to develop more confidence and stuff like that? Like, what do you see that environment being like at your future academy?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Thanks for asking. The motivation really is there's a few motivations. Number one is that we want to continue to spread good jiu-jitsu. And the reason why we want to spread good jiu-jitsu is we want to make sure that society is safer, right? We know that, I think the statistic was like 78% of women are assaulted in some point in their life. That means if you have 4 women in your life, 3 out of the 4 are most likely to get some kind of assault that would happen to them, right? Of varying degrees. So what do we want to do? And me having 2 daughters, being married, having a lot of friends, who also are married and also have daughters. I want to make sure that we empower these women and these young girls who are about to go into college or into high school with skills that will allow them to defend themselves. Right. At the end of the day, it's jiu-jitsu is definitely fun. It's definitely, you can go out there, do flying triangles and arm bars and all that stuff, but it's really a tool and a vehicle for self-development and self-protection, self-defense. So you want to make sure that we are able to give the tools to these girls and women so that if they ever find themselves in a bad situation, that they can get out of there and get home safely. Right. And so then that's the primary motivation is for them. We also want to make sure that the law enforcement officers also have a platform to learn. We have plenty of police officers that we train with, like Mike Johnson, who I've been training with for like 7-8 years now. He's the lieutenant in Howard County Police Department. And there's a handful of federal and local and state police officers that train at Columbia Rising Tide, and who also will be training with us in High Tech, the school that I'm opening up. And so the idea is that we want to give them more tools rather than just like, okay, you have a hammer, you have a fist, you have a taser. No, there's other ways to control without jeopardizing your job, jeopardizing your freedoms, and also preserving the trust that the society has in the law enforcement as well. So the idea is, we want to make sure we address that societal issue as well by giving law enforcement officers a platform to train and get the skills that they need. Then obviously we want to make sure that some of the underprivileged people out there have access to, who may not have access to, martial arts training to learn something and to kind of keep them into trouble. So there is a charitable aspect that we're trying to work in as well to make jiu-jitsu affordable for the people that can't afford, in every way that it's presented right now. So that's one of the other things. And obviously we want to have fun. Jiu-jitsu is an awesome sport. Muay Thai is a great way to lose weight. So it's really about bettering the community, but bettering the part of society that we have access to and that we're a part of. These are all the parts of or some of the motivations that we have to opening our school.
And I love that you're emphasizing how does this help prepare you for your life outside of the jiu-jitsu school or outside of the
Mhm,
competition room or the MMA
mhm,
cage or whatever. Like so often these days people are opening up an academy and the reason for it is they want to produce more world champions. They want to create more
mhm,
success in competition. And everything that I just heard from
mhm,
you is kind of the opposite. It's like, yeah, that's all cool. We're obviously going to be working on the getting good at jujitsu, but the reason for that is
mhm,
because you have this life outside of jujitsu that we're going to get you prepared for, like for self-defense or for your
mhm.
job as a law enforcement officer or, security or something like that, some sort of job that creates an income and a
Yeah,
and a livelihood that jiu-jitsu will make you better at, and I just think that's
yeah. I
great.
mean,
That's amazing.
even thank you. Even an extension of that. So it doesn't have to be like a defense-based job or a physical security-based job. Even Google and Facebook, they offer jiu-jitsu classes on campus because they know if they can empower and instill confidence on their physically smaller employees who may be shy to speak up, and they once they have this confidence that jiu-jitsu has given them, they saw that those people were speaking up more. They were speaking out and presenting their opinions and presenting their perspectives because they now have the confidence to do so. And that's why these big companies all around the US, these big tech companies have invested in jiu-jitsu because it's a vehicle for them to get more of their employees to get more confidence, and then for them to get really more value out of their employees. Because if I'm paying you, Paul, to come in, I'm not paying you for anything else other than your brain power. But if you're not sharing what's inside of your brain, I'm not really getting what I'm paying for. But if I give you the confidence to share what's in your brain, then I'm starting to get the value. And jujitsu really, through giving the people confidence, as the big tech companies are seeing, they're able to then start contributing at a higher level as well.
That's huge. I didn't know. I knew that they were offering training, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that that was the reason that they're doing it. That's
That's the reason. That's
very revealing, and that says a lot. And
confidence, man.
says a lot.
Confidence. Yeah, yeah.
Dude, it goes back to this quote that I wrote down that you said. You said confidence allows you to be yourself. I think that's going to be like the theme of our
Yeah.
episode. Is that's so true, man? Is like confidence. It's like it's
Yeah.
everything, and something else too. Like just to talk about kind of a different form of self-defense. A confident person doesn't get taken advantage of as easily. Like in their relationships, they're not going to get walked
Yeah.
all over by some girlfriend or boyfriend who might have a personality disorder. They might be a narcissist. Your daughter is going to be like, oh, screw this guy, like I'm not putting up with this, and move on. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, whereas if they didn't have that confidence, then they get into like, oh, that's just how he's supposed to treat me, like it's cool if he's rude to me, like
Yeah.
whatever.
No.
Like all that stuff just goes out the door. If someone tries to take
Right.
advantage of you in business, you're going to be like, oh, fuck that. Like, I'm not going to deal with this person. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like, you just are going to shut it down. Like, I've had
Yeah.
situations too where I've had to kick someone out of a rental property that I had because they weren't paying rent. So I was like, hey, you got to leave. And they tried to pull some nonsense. And I was like, no, you really got to go. Like, I'm not going to let them, walk all over me or come up with some nonsense just because I'm
Mm-hmm.
confident, just because I know that I can handle the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not ever going to even get to violence because they know not to screw with me. Like, good luck if
Yeah.
you're again going back to your daughter. She's never going to have trouble with an abusive boyfriend because no one would ever hit her. Like they know she'd break their arm.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you're never, just as a
Right.
dad,
Right.
you're never going to have
Right.
to worry about that. You know what I'm saying? Like that's huge. And it doesn't get
Mm-hmm.
talked about enough.
Dude, it's again one of my. We all hopefully have the chance and opportunity to see our daughters and our kids grow and pursue their interests. And in doing so, there's going to be separation. They're going to go live their own life, and they're not going to be under your wing anymore. They have to be able to fend for themselves. And I'd rather have my kids be kind of frustrated at me, kind of angry at me that I'm, yeah, taking away from like whatever activity they wanted to do and making them go and train 2-3 times a week so that they have these skills and never have to use it, opposed to being in a situation where they should have been training and they needed that skill, right? So I think that goes back to that old saying, right? It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war zone, right? And so for me, is I you know, I'm not like here raising warriors, but I'm definitely raising capable, confident children who can manage for themselves if I'm not there. And that's the whole idea. And it's really very selfish because I don't want to have to be worried about them. You know, so they don't know the value, or they probably didn't know the value of me dragging them to training like years ago. But after the first couple of sessions, they're like, you should see the looks on their faces. They are just so happy they got to roll with their friends. They got to wrestle or tussle or, you know, learn some techniques. And, you know, if parents can get through and get over those few humps and the couple of the resistance that their kids show, there's going to be immense value that your kids are going to get out of it, and the parents will get out of it as well, because it's always easier to raise good kids than to than to fix broken adults, right? And so I think that's something that I think Mike has said a couple of times that's also resonated with me. And another thing that's resonated with me is that parents always quit first. It's not necessarily the kid. The kid will always push to say, "Hey, I don't want to go to school, or I don't want to go and train." The parent just has to hear it like one too many times. They're like, "You're right. I'd rather stay at home and watch Family Feud or do this or that." But there's an immense amount of responsibility that we have as parents to our children. We have to make sure that they can read, they can write, they can swim, they can, you know, maybe grow some food and ride a bike. But you know what? They should also know how to defend for themselves as well. And that's a major skill set that I think a lot of people sometimes kind of gloss over.
Yeah, man. And it's that same lifestyle that will teach them to be self-sufficient when they get out and they have a job, or they have, maybe they want to start a business or something like that. Like they have that foundation already about, you know, knowing how to accomplish that goal, and they have the resiliency and the mental toughness that it's going to take to actually pull it off, because it's a difficult world out there these days. It's not just, you know, it really is. You got to be aggressive with your goals. You have to be after it. You got to be consistent. You can't just give up. And you're right, man. Like so often people just fold, and they just fold so easily. And it's because they fold with themselves. They give it up easily. And they don't actually try. So then of course, they're going to teach that to their kids. And it really is like you're either living in the idiocracy or you're out being like the Marvel superhero. Like, I mean, I know that's kind of an extreme, but it really is kind of either you're the person who's making cool YouTube videos of you doing cool stuff, or you're the person who's binging that person's YouTube video and not doing anything. Or you're starring in the Netflix show, you're making the Netflix television series, living your best life, or you're watching it. You know what I'm saying? Like you're either working for the guy who owns the business, or you're running the business. You know, it's kind of like, it's just that whole mindset. And I think jiu-jitsu teaches that to people. It's like, you got to really go for it. You got to really, and you can, you know, going back to what you said earlier, confidence gives you the ability to be yourself and actually go for these things. So, man, that's
totally agree. It's persistence. You know, I read an article the other day, and I actually posted it on Facebook, or I think it was a TED talk, and they talked about the biggest differentiator between you know, kids and people who were going to be successful or not, or, you know, they did some kind of like retrospective study and analysis, and they found like the one characteristic was grit, right? Grit, the ability to kind of just tough it out, regardless of if things are going your way or not, you still have an end goal in mind. You're still going to go and put the time in, get the skills, whatever you need to do to achieve that goal or that outcome. And that's really, again, that there's a strong alignment with that and jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu is not going to be a straight shot like you show up 4 times a week and you'll get your black belt in 8 years. No, there's going to be months that you're going to take off because maybe you got your arm cracked, or maybe something happened, or maybe there's life happened and you just can't go and train, right? But you have to come back and get back into the training cycle. And no matter how long you actually step away from jiu-jitsu, it's totally fine to come back at any time. No one's going to mock you for being gone. They'll be happy to see you come back. And guess what? No one's going to be like, oh yeah, you suck now. No, they'll be happy to get you back in the training cycle, get you back in the routine, and help you achieve those goals too. So it's okay if you fall off the horse, so to speak, but get back on it. You're in, and
Yep.
I love this one quote where it's like, in 10 years is going to pass anyway. I think it was like Chris Howder or someone said, 10 years is going to pass anyway. Why not be a black belt? So put in the time, just train a couple of days a week. I mean, if you think about it, there's 168 hours in a week. If you train 4 hours, that's less than 3% of the week that you're putting in time for yourself, for self-improvement, for your own mental health, for your own personal health, and for the health of everyone around you. To go in and do jiu-jitsu, I think that's one of the best investments that you can make.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. And if you have any doubts about what Naqi's talking about, just listen to this podcast. That's really our whole theme, is just interviewing people just like you, man, who have kind of dedicated their life to jiu-jitsu or seen some massive improvement from it, just in the way that it's helped their life off the mats. And man, we got to start wrapping this up. But I wanted to talk about one more thing, man, before we did this, before we we got to get you back here for part 2 sometime in a few months, like after you guys are open. And I want to hear about that first wave of students and kind of what you're seeing with them and like what that experience is like. So we'll do a part 2, but I just want to ask you, man, where do you hope that this will go? Like, what's your big, let's say 10 years from now, what would be your best case scenario here for how this could go and kind of what the future holds for this new academy?
That's a really good question. 10 years from now is like when my older daughter could be a black belt. My partner's son, Ted's sons could be black belts from now, and my younger daughter could also be a black belt from now. So you could have technically another crop of black belts who've already been training for like 10 years plus, or anywhere between 6 and 10 years, and they could have taken this academy and maybe even open their own and continue to spread jiu-jitsu. You got to think about, like, back in the day, there was like a karate dojo like in every shopping center, right? And if you go to like some parts of California, there's a couple of schools not too far from each other, right? And so they're like maybe 3-4 miles from each other. And jiu-jitsu is, I think, on that same trajectory where people are starting to learn, and I think people acknowledge that jiu-jitsu is one of the real martial arts. You have jiu-jitsu, judo, boxing, Muay Thai, wrestling. These are like the 5 real martial arts that I see. And jiu-jitsu is the one that you can actually pressure test at a very high level. And so my dream would be that maybe my daughters would open up their own school. Maybe we have a few more branches of Rising Tide Academy throughout Maryland. That would be great. That would be the hope, and just continue to spread good jiu-jitsu where we can give these people the skills that they want, that allow them to be confident and real confidence, not like punching air and breaking wooden boards confidence, where no one's ever really gonna have to do that in real life. So that's the vision, is ultimately start here and then develop our students, develop our kids, and see if they will have an interest in perpetuating that. And if so, that would be cool. And if not, then whatever they do, they should do, and should have the confidence in pursuing that and be happy. So this is my happiness.
I love it, man. And I think
Yeah.
that just to highlight something you said, jiu-jitsu is taken off like crazy. Like it's amazing. I'm getting ready to open an academy out here actually in the spring. And so we'll have to stay connected. And if you ever come out this way, we can have you as a guest instructor.
Yeah.
But dude, it'll be
Oh
fun.
man, that would be an honor.
But what I was gonna say is just the biggest city around here is Springfield, Missouri, and it's about an hour and a half from where I live. And every time I go train in Springfield, there or at some open mat, there's always some new school there. There's all these new schools that have opened, like. And Springfield's not that big. Like it's way smaller than the area that you're in. You know, like Columbia, Baltimore area. Like Springfield is like middle-sized city for America. And there's jiu-jitsu schools opening up like crazy. Like, and I mean, granted, of course, some of them might not stick around, who knows, but at the moment, it's like they're probably like 10 at least, just kind of off the top of my head. And they're all pretty good too. That's the other thing. They're all really good. Like it's all pretty high level stuff. Like at
That's
the local tournaments, they do well, you know. So it's taken off. Like just even out here in really, you know, kind of the middle of nowhere United States. So especially where you're at, man, I think it's gonna thrive. I think you're gonna do super well. And you got a guy like Mike Stewart coaching you and helping you out. Like, you know, that guy's got the master from a business perspective. So you're gonna do well, man.
Yeah, no, we're definitely honored to be a part of the Rising Tide affiliation. It's awesome. Mike and I have had such a close relationship ever since we first met. Like it became, you know, just went from the point of me being, you know, the parent of his student to being training partners to being very close training partners, and then also just seeing his business journey from the early days, and then, you know, being involved in that process to where it is now. It's also given me a lot of insight and appreciation for everything that he does and brings to the table.
He's the master sensei with that stuff. And hey man, we got to wrap this up, but tell us, where can people find you and where can they learn more about your academy if they want to sign up, if they're in the Maryland area?
Cool. Yeah, the website is hitechmartialarts.com, HITECH martialarts.com. And we have a Facebook page, Rising Tide High Tech. And then we also have an Instagram page, which is Rising Tide High Tech as well. And it's just HI, not HIGH. Yeah, you can follow us there. There's an opt-in page. Just message one of those, message us through one of those platforms. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, so you can always just reach out to me directly and I can get you connected and set up. We're aiming to open either late November or early December, so this year. So we're not that far away. We just got the mats delivered yesterday. So things are moving. We got the mats delivered. There's just a few more things that they got to get done for us to get the use and occupancy going. And yes, so if you're interested, hit us up. We're going to have a nice, fun, chill vibe. We're definitely trying to foster a culture where everyone is respectful of each other, not trying to make you know, like a grinding, you know, type of an environment in this, you know, for our foundational or fundamental classes. We do have a competition class, so if people are interested in that, we can cater to that too. But we're going to have jiu-jitsu for kids. We're going to have Muay Thai for kids, women's only classes, and we'll have some big news about the women's only class coming up in a couple of days. So stay tuned for that.
Naqi, this is awesome. I'm excited to watch this grow.
Yeah.
And if you're listening, if you live in the DMV area, I'm going to put all the links down below for where you can check out High Tech Martial Arts. Naqi, you're the man. Thanks for coming on the show, man. It's been fun.
Oh man, thank you, Paul. Thank you so much for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Anytime, bro.